in honor of February 22nd, 2022, 2/22/22, when I'm recording this, what is my favorite Detroit Pistons duo that I've grown up, that I got to watch growing up? We'll talk about that. And also, are the Pistons in the tankers group of the NBA, and how do they get out of it? And all kinds of other things concerning that in today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I'm your host, Kuka Hill. You can find me over on Twitter at Kuka Hill. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. And if you have not already, head to our YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button. It's the best way to support the podcast. We are on our way to 2,000 subscribers. So again, if you haven't already, head to our YouTube at Locked On Pistons. Subscribe to the channel. I'd really appreciate it. It's the best way to support the channel. But when I'm recording this, it's going to be February 22nd, 2022. And I'm sure you guys have all seen all the fun things people are doing. Since because, it's 2 across the board. I don't know when exactly you'll have something like that again. I didn't look that up. I'm not like some big guy into this. I have no clue when this will happen. I don't know how unusual of an event this is. I'm sure it's very unusual or rare. But there's been a bunch of stuff, fun content-wise, people have been doing with this. So I wanted to talk about what I think is my favorite Pistons duo that I've watched growing up in honor of this. And also later on the podcast, the Locked On Network had a fun roundtable they did. I suggest you guys go listen to it on any of the other tankers podcasts. Some of the teams at the bottom of the league, they did a roundtable and they talked about, why is your team here? Does your team deserve to be here? How do you get out? And a bunch of other questions that I was supposed to be a part of, but I missed it. I'm not happy about it. I missed it. So instead of you guys just missing out on that completely, since your Pistons host wasn't a part of it, I'll just answer all those questions here, and we'll talk about it alone here. And I'm sure we'll try to make it as fun as possible as well. But my favorite Pistons duo. So I just want to let you guys know something. I had some of you guys tweet at me and also comment in the YouTube video saying this in my I believe 2 videos ago in the mailbag segment, because one of you guys asked me something concerning like the 2000s going to work Pistons, and I mentioned something about not having too much of a memory or something like that, something along those lines. And one of you guys were like, "Oh my God, imagine your latest memory, or imagine not watching the Pistons before 2008." It wasn't like I didn't watch the Pistons before 2008. I was just like 6 years old, and I don't remember everything vividly. Like, I remember the Pistons winning the championship. I remember where I was when that happened. I remember watching it when I was a kid. I remember like spot moments after that. I remember Rip dropping, what was it, like 50 points at Madison Square Garden, like double OT or something. I remember the playoff series against the Celtics. I remember the playoff series against the Cavs in which Boobie Gibson went off. But I don't remember anything throughout the season. I don't have like the same memory of a storyline and emotions that went through a season. I don't have all that until like 2010, because by then I was like 12 years old. So I'm only 24 now. So I don't feel like it would be right again. And we've said this before in the podcast. We've done fun things like this. I don't feel like it would be right of me if I did pick like Chauncey or Rip or Ben and Sheed or something like that, because I don't really like, as those guys like idols and like icons, obviously growing up. I don't actually have that sentimental, like, let me not say that. I just don't have like the same memories as like people older than me do. I don't have the same, I went through this season with the ups and downs. I remember storylines. I remember what happened in this game and that game and how they put this together and overcame this. And like, I don't have any of that. I only remember like the outcomes, the specific moments of each season. Now, as of 2010, I can tell you just about everything that happened throughout a season. I've experienced everything after that because I was older and was able to understand all of it. But so I'm not going to pick overall that whole soliloquy right there was just to say I'm not going to pick Chauncey and Rip. I'm not going to pick Sheed or Ben. I'm not going to pick Isaiah Thomas and Zeke, or Isaiah Thomas and Joe Dumars. I'm not going to pick, Grant Hill and Jerry Stackhouse or something. Like, I'm not going to pick something like that because I didn't like get to live that the same way I got to live like these other memories, day to day, game to game, week to week, all the storylines, etc. So I'm not going to pick those guys. And if you guys are putting all those things together, you guys are probably already thinking, before I even mention mine, like, oh God, well, while that may be fair, you don't have much to go off of ever since 2010. They've done nothing but lose. And yes, you are correct. I don't have much to go off of here. It's not many positive signs, and mine is not going to be as glamorous and going to have as many accolades and put a bigger stamp on the Pistons like these other guys have, because the Pistons have not been good since I started watching, but started like legitimately remembering game to game stuff and following them with a level of understanding and knowledge about what goes on in a season and being able to keep memories. You could go. There's only like a few duos really to pick from. You're not going to pick one from a trash era that only like won 20 games. So I think everyone understands you're going to have to come from after Andre Drummond was drafted. So you could go like Reggie Jackson, Andre Drummond. You could go what is it, like Tobias Andre Drummond or something? Yeah, it's not great. But my answer, I think, would be, if I'm being completely honest, the season that brought me probably the most joy had to be with this duo, and my duo would be Blake Griffin and Andre Drummond. Simply because, again, I've started like remembering and putting together these memories and following things with knowledge and understanding since like 2010. And the Pistons didn't have any success until Andre was drafted. And that came even after he was drafted. It was like a few years before they made the playoffs in 2015. And in that series, it was Reggie Jackson and Andre Drummond. Basically, that was a big duo. You had Tobias and Marcus Morris and KCP. So you had those guys, and the Pistons yet have won a playoff series. So again, I just want to make sure everyone understands this, guy. I know there's going to be a bunch of people in the comments, but you guys tweeting at me. Listen, it's not going to be as glamorous as your guys' picks. It goes to you guys who are older than me. Make sure you guys let me know your guys' picks, what your guys' favorite duo growing up watching was. If it's Chauncey Ben or Chauncey Ben, Chauncey Rashid and Ben. If you go all the way back to the Bad Boys, are you a Teal guy era? Like, just let me know where you guys are at and what your guys' answers are. For me, sadly, maybe I'm just not as lucky as you guys. I'm so sorry. However, I think my favorite duo has to be Blake Griffin and Andre Drummond, because that was the one season I feel like I had the most fun watching the Pistons. They were the most competitive. They had the most talented, one of, if not the most talented player in Pistons history, in Blake Griffin, who put up one of, if not the best single season statistical season in Pistons history in Blake Griffin. And in Blake Griffin, Andre Drummond, they were really dominant on the court, specifically in the second half of that season. The Pistons were just dominating teams with them two guys on the court. I think they were at one point, what was it, like 15-4 in the second half before Blake got hurt. But that season right there is just one of those seasons that I'll always remember. Even though it didn't lead to no playoff wins, no season that I've watched so far of the Pistons that we're talking about here after 2010 led to playoff wins. But what duo gave me the most happiness? What duo gave me the best storyline throughout the season? What duo gave me, the happiest season, the most competitive season, the most fun product on the floor, the best product on the floor? Some people will look down at this and be like, the Pistons have really fallen. Maybe so, but my favorite duo would have to be so far Blake Griffin and Andre Drummond. There's just no other one that really rivals it. I feel like the only other one that we've seen this far that would rival it is like Reggie Jackson and Andre Drummond. That's the only other one that really led to success or anything. So I don't know. I don't have anything else to pick from. I could go with this year's team just because of how big Kate Cunningham is, how meaningful it was to get Kate Cunningham, and how much he's already revitalized the city somewhat, and how much he's already put like a bunch of fuel into the team and interjected the fan base with a shot of just excitement. I could go with like Cade and Killian, because I really am a fan of Killian, so I could go with that duo. But outside of that, there's no other players I particularly like watching their games to the point of like Blake and Andre that also led to fun times on the court and wins. So it's just, I think that's where I'm going with it. So that's my favorite duo that I've watched growing up in the Pistons jersey. You guys got to let me know what's your guys' favorite growing up Pistons duo. If you guys are older, I'd love to hear how many of you guys who are older that are listening to the podcast. Let me know if it's Zeke and Joe Dumars. Is there someone else on those teams that we're not talking about that you actually enjoyed more? Even the Grant Hill, Jerry Stackhouse era. Let me know if you're around then. Or if you're just a tad older than me and got to actually have those memories of the 2000s going to work team. Who was your guys' favorite duo? Is it Chauncey and Rip, Ben and Rashid, Ben and Tayshaun? Who was it? Let me know in the comment section down below or on Twitter at Kuka Hill. I'd really appreciate it. I think it would be a fun conversation. I'm really interested in hearing it. And don't rag on me too hard simply for being young. I can't help the fact that I was born in the Pistons and immediately had to start paying for their sins. And after selling their soul to get those dominance in the 2000s, I immediately have paid for it since I was, became a legit fan every single day. But It is what it is. Have to do what you have to do. But when we come back, we'll answer some of the questions. Do the Pistons belong in the tankers group? How do they get out? What are some things that come with it? All kinds of questions concerning being at the bottom of the NBA for as long as the Pistons have been, and specifically this season. We'll talk about that, answer some of those questions. But first, I have to tell you guys about one of our sponsors, PrizePicks. All right, NBA fans, are you looking for a daily fantasy option for the NBA? Then you need to try their award-winning app, PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. I love this. I know you will too. It's easy to use. You pick 2 to 5 players and over/under in the projections. You can win up to 10 times on any entry, and it's just you versus the projected numbers. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's really just that easy. PrizePicks is safe and offers fast withdrawals, so make sure you use the award-winning app on both the App Store and Google Play. PrizePicks offers any prop you can think of, from point scores to rebounds and even steals. PrizePicks allows mixed sports entries as well. So let's say while the football season was going on, you could take the over on Jared Goff's passing yards, but also the under, and let's say Sadiq Bey's points in a singular game, and you can have that in the exact same entry. And PrizePicks doesn't just offer NBA; they have options on college basketball, college football, NFL, MLB, soccer, MMA, and more. And for a limited time, PrizePicks has an exclusive no-brainer of an offer for all of our users. Users get $50 for free if a player in your first PrizePicks entry scores a single point. But you must use our promo code NBA. That's right. This is an exclusive offer available to Locked On fans. Sign up today and use our promo code NBA for $50 for free if a player in your first PrizePicks entry scores a singular point. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms. And if you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button. If you're watching this on YouTube and you haven't hit the subscribe button already, what are you waiting for? You know, it's the best way to support the podcast. You're coming by for the content all the time. Make sure you go down below and hit that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. We're on our road to 2,000 subscribers, and we are trying to continue to show Locked On that we are the best and fastest growing fan base at the Locked On Network. So one more time, if you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button. It's the best way to support the podcast. Like I told you guys, I'm slurring over my words. Like I told you guys at the beginning of the podcast, Locked On had a fun roundtable with like 6 or 7 teams at the bottom of the NBA, and they had a roundtable and just recorded it together, and they asked these questions to each other. It was a lot of fun. They went for about 30 to 45 minutes. I was supposed to be a part of this, but for reasons that I will not disclose, I was not able to do that. I was not able to be a part of it. I missed it. And I'm disappointed in that because I liked the roundtables. Last time we did a roundtable, you guys really liked it. And I'm disappointed that I got to miss that. However, that doesn't mean we're not going to talk about some of the things that they talked about in there, just about the Pistons. We don't have to listen. The one thing you guys will get to skip out on, you guys don't have to hear about the Cavs. You guys won't have to, or the Cavs not in there no more, but because the Cavs elevated. But you won't have to hear about Jalen Green and the Rockets. I'm sure you guys don't want to have to listen to that. You won't have to listen about the Orlando Magic. You don't have to listen to these guys. So now you only have to listen to the Pistons, which I'm sure is a lot more fun to you guys. So we're just going to cycle through these questions. We'll answer them, and we'll try to have as much fun alone with just me and you as they did with all the other Locked On hosts at the bottom of the NBA together, laughing together. I'm sure we can have just as much fun. So first question, obviously, is: are the Detroit Pistons deserving of being in the tankers group? When you consider, when you're putting together these type of roundtables, do the Pistons deserve to be thrown into the tankers group? I think everyone understands the answer is obviously yes. The Pistons are 13-45. They're the second, or they're tied for the worst team in the Eastern Conference. They actually are tied for the worst team in the entire NBA. The only reason why they're not technically at that right now is because the Orlando Magic have played more games. Orlando Magic are 13-47. The Pistons are 13-45. So the Pistons 100% deserve to be in the tankers group, not only because of their record as well, but I think it's quite clear that while maybe the Pistons didn't go all outright and just tank the free agency and tank, just purposely try to put awful product out there. They didn't particularly try to put great product on the floor that would lead to wins, and they definitely were heading into the season tanking again. They tanked last season. You can call it restoration. You can call it they're trying to restore. All that other stuff, they try to substitute the word in. Listen, this team was tanking. Again, this is 2 years in a row. They're tanking. They 100% deserve to be in this tankers group, and they're probably the worst team in the NBA. They're competing with the Orlando Magic at this point. But without a doubt, 100%, they absolutely deserve to be in this tanking group. Towards the end of the podcast, we'll answer the question, then how do you get out of the tankers group? How do they plan to get out of here? But we're not going to answer that yet. We're going to go through the process of being a tanker. Another question that was asked on this roundtable, and again, I just want to mention to you guys, if you guys want to watch the roundtable or listen to the roundtable and hear all the stuff from other teams and their perspective on tanking teams, you guys can head to the Rockets channel, the Magic's channel, a few of the other teams at the bottom of the NBA's channel. You got the Pacers, you got the Thunder. So make sure you go check those out. And that if you guys want to listen to that, it'll be fun. You guys won't hear Pistons stuff, but you guys want to hear some across the NBA stuff. It probably was a really fun time I missed out on. But the next question that they ended up going through with each other is, did any of the changes that your team made at the trade deadline affect the NBA landscape or your team's goals? I don't think the Pistons trading for Marvin Bagley changed any of their team goals. That's not going to help them win more games. I feel like down the stretch, they're going to hopefully be more competitive and look like more of a functional offense. That's the hope, and that's what we've talked about on the podcast here a lot. But that didn't change anything with the Pistons the rest of the season. Nothing they did at the trade deadline was going to change anything for how they wanted the rest of the season to go. Now, if they would have traded Jeremy Grant, then still they would have probably kept trying to lose, but that would have changed their goals for how they wanted to go about the season, what was important in all that. However, they did not trade Jeremy Grant. They only traded for Marvin Bagley and got rid of some guys who they got rid of one guy in Josh Jackson who wasn't in the rotation, and they got rid of one guy in Trey Lyles who no one really cared that much about in a second-round pick. So I don't think anything that Pistons did at the deadline really shapes or changes, how you're looking at this season, how you're looking at the season the rest of the year. It gives you something else to watch for. It gives you another player to watch develop. But overall, as a team, I don't think it's changed any of their goals. And no matter who, whether Trey Lyles and Josh Jackson were still here or Marvin Bagley, this team was going to lose a lot of games down the stretch anyways. They're going to finish as probably the worst team in the NBA either way. I don't think anything that happened at the trade deadline did anything here. And then lastly, they asked this question among the round table, and this is not really concerning the Pistons, but we'll wrap this segment up and then we'll come back after the ad break. The Pelicans and the Kings made big moves to avoid being here. Were they right to go all in? I think the Kings, just real quick to touch on this, two teams that ended up moving out of the tankers group real quick. I think both these teams made the right decision here. The Kings needed to, maybe you can disagree with the trade that they did make, but them trying to go all in for the playoffs and, for a team that was supposed to be doing that, you have a fan base that's getting wild and kind of wants a winner. Them making the playoffs would be a pretty big deal. It'd be like them winning a playoff series, I feel like, at this point for how long they've been gone. So I get why the Kings went for it, because they have the talent on their roster that really should be competing for it anyways. So they went, and made a big move. So I agree with why they did it. And obviously the Pelicans, they had been playing some really good basketball over like the past 2 months. Brandon Ingram was playing extremely well. And you figured once Zion got back, you probably wanted another piece as well to try and make things work and see if you could really try and make some noise. So CJ McCollum makes sense. They need another scorer, but obviously now all the Zion stuff's come out, and maybe that throws a dent into all that. But I agree with both the moves they did. I get why they did it. And I think they did the right thing doing so for the rest of the season. I do not think the Pistons should have done something crazy like that. I don't think any of us think they should have done crazy like that. But for those two teams who wanted to get out this tankers group that involved the Detroit Pistons, I think it made a lot of sense for them. I can't blame them. So when we come back, we'll talk about it. Did the Pistons overestimate themselves coming into this season? Did they underestimate themselves? How do the Pistons get out of this tankers group? What's the next step? What do they do? Are they doing a good job of the tanking process right now, the restoration? How do I grade that? We'll talk about all of that when we come back. But first, I had to tell you guys about another one of our sponsors, BetOnline.net. Football season might be over with my guy, Matthew Stafford, my quarterback of the Detroit Lions over the last 13, 12 years, winning the Super Bowl finally. But basketball is in full steam for both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, and player performance props to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline.net has the number one spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds right to the Olympic coverage and information. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action today. So again, head to their website today, betonline.net, or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action today. BetOnline, where the game starts. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. And if you haven't already, head to our YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button. We're on our way to 2,000 subscribers. We're close. We're getting there. It's the best way to support the podcast. So again, head to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button. If you have not already, I'd really appreciate it. But how do the Pistons, how do they get out of the tankers group? Like, how do the Pistons get out of here? I feel like outside of all like the little years between Stan Van Gundy's era with the Pistons after the first season of Josh Smith with Andre Drummond, all the way to the final season of Blake's prime, which was 18-19, the Pistons have been in this tankers group for the entirety of the 2010s. It's just been really bad. And some of the years, they may have not even been there on purpose. They just happened to be there. Now, under different management, under different leadership, under different coaching staff, under a completely different squad roster that we've seen from like a year and a half ago, how have they done in trying to get out of this tankers group? Before we even answered how do they get out of it, like how have they done thus far? Are they doing a good job in this process? I think the answer would have to be yes, strictly because Kate Cunningham's on the team. Now, that has to do with pure luck, I feel like. That's not something, the Pistons did. Like, you could say, oh, well, last season they purposely lost, and that led to them, and that was simply of their own action. But the lottery comes down to that. No matter if they finish 1, 2, 3, or 4, they had the same amount of odds, and it still would have came down to the lottery and things falling their way. So the Pistons got lucky. And, every team has to get some luck to get out of this group. Every team has to get some luck to make a deep playoff run. Every team has to make a type of luck to win a championship. Luck is a part of sports. So the Pistons got lucky and got Kate Cunningham. So I think that right there is really saving them. But even before that, they did make a few moves that kind of, put this team in a good position as far as when it comes to looking at a team as a tanker or in a tanking group or is trying to restore. They did end up, when Troy Weaver first took over this team, we were looking at Bruce Brown and Luke Kennard as like their best assets, and they were able to flip Luke Kennard. Actually, I won't even say flip Luke Kennard because I still kind of hesitate on calling that trade an absolute win because of how much they gave up. But there's no doubt about it that they got the guy they wanted, and the guy they wanted is turned out to be pretty damn good in Sadiq Bey. They gave up Luke Kennard 4 second-round picks for that 19th pick from, I believe, it was Brooklyn, but he ended up in L.A., correct? I believe that's how that trade went. But yeah, they got Sadiq Bey, who was a really good pick. And, I feel like that was a good spot there. They ended up trading for Isaiah Stewart, but I don't think anyone, in the Pistons fan base or follows the Pistons would say Isaiah Stewart was such a big hit and big trade that they made for him that it just like put this team on such a great road ahead and all that. I think you could probably say that about Sadiq. Sadiq, I think he's pretty clearly proven that he's going to be a starter on the team moving forward when they're ready to win. Possibly even more, but at the very least a starter and pretty damn good one when it's time to get there. So I think that was a pretty good hit in their first draft or second draft. They get the number 1 overall pick and the best prospect in the draft, I feel like, in Kate Cunningham. So did they have a lot of luck to go their way? Yes, with Kate Cunningham. Did Troy Weaver also force his hand and go after the guy he wanted 3 different times, Killian Hayes, Isaiah Stewart, and Sadiq Bey, and hit massively on one thus far? Yes. And did that help? Absolutely. So I feel like they did do some things that helped them in their position. And obviously the biggest one is getting lucky to get Kate Cunningham, which obviously makes this, you feel good about that or good about where you are simply because of that. But I think overall you'd have to say yes to that question. The Pistons have done a fine job so far in their tanking and restoration process. I think this offseason is when you're really going to start seeing like altering decisions. Thus far, I don't think Troy Weaver's been really hit with any franchise-altering decisions. If Killian Hayes busts, then, he busts. And, I don't think him, it would hurt. It would hurt. And definitely you probably want to have been, the Pistons would probably be like maybe, I won't even say they'd be a year back or anything, but they probably would rather it come from a guy on a rookie contract. And there's other picks that maybe could have been better. One specifically, maybe Tyrese Halliburton would have been better for this team. But then you also don't get Kate Cunningham, probably. So who knows? I think this offseason is when Troy Weaver gets faced with his first legitimate offseason where, decisions he makes is either going to push the Pistons towards the bottom still, possibly with some turmoil, or is going to take the next step, and we'll see what happens there. But I think so far you have to say yes. They're on the right track thus far in their restoration, simply basically, like we said, because they got Kate Cunningham. Has this season gone differently than we expected before the season? Me personally, no. Did some individual development? Yes, some of the things didn't go as I planned. I thought maybe Killian Hayes would look better. I thought maybe Isaiah Stewart would at least be trying to take threes. I didn't expect Josh Jackson to be as bad as he was. There's some individual development stuff. Yeah, some things didn't go how I thought. But overall, you guys will remember before the season, I said the Pistons could see improvement across the board on their roster and still finish at the bottom of the conference. Now, that hasn't happened, but them finishing at the bottom of the conference looks like it's about to happen either way. So they've done exactly, or as far as the win-loss column, they're right at where I expected them to be, and this isn't shocking to me where they're at right now. So it is what it is. Are the Pistons here on purpose? Absolutely. Absolutely. And here we go. Now we answer this real question, the for real question, the question I feel like we've all been waiting for here that are listening to this. How long do we expect the Pistons to be in this tankers group, and how do they get out of it? Now, I feel like the Pistons' plan, I think they honestly want to be out the tanking group next season. Now, do they go from the tankers group to a play-in group? I don't know. Lockdown did something really fun. They had like the best teams in the East Conference. They had the playoff hopefuls. They had the play-in hopefuls. They had the no man's land group, and then the tankers. Do I think the Pistons could then find themselves in the no man's land group that's like competing for a play-in, but also probably still in the lottery somewhere? I think they'll probably find themselves somewhere like that next season, unless they make some big and multiple big moves in this upcoming offseason, which is possible. But I don't think that you should just assume that the Pistons are going to go out and get every single person they want, every great player they want. I doubt they go out there and they get the number 1 overall pick again, and then also get their choice of DeAndre and Miles Bridges that just both want to come to the Pistons, and also swing a trade for Jeremy Grant and get the absolute player they want. I doubt all those things break right for the Pistons, and they're able to get to the play-in. Also, the East is really damn good, and it's just hard to envision right now before a season. Obviously, as the season plays out, and once you start seeing stuff happen, you can see players, teams jump other teams all the time, and it's just about, this is something that I always mention. I've mentioned a few times on the podcast. Before a season, it's hard to just simply say, "Oh, this team will be better than this team," because it's not, it's not really about that. You're not playing the other team 82 times. It's more about, okay, which team beats the worst teams most? Which team takes advantage of their business the most out of here and enables them to then jump? So I think that kind of thing can happen anytime throughout a season. You see it happen all the time. So next year, maybe we see that happen with the Pistons, depending on what they do in this offseason. But I think they're going to try to be out the tankers group next season. And if not next season, 100% the season after that, they'll be out the tanking group. And how do they do that? How do they get out of the tanking group? And how do they get to that spot when they're competing for a plan? They're in the plan. They're in the playoffs. How do they get to that point? One, I think the massive thing here, I'm sure you guys' answer would probably be different, but the massive thing here is individual development and inside the house development. The Pistons are not going to be some big free agent destination. Kay Cunningham may become a great all-NBA player and try to attract people to Detroit. But overall, so far, it just doesn't seem like Detroit is going to be that big free agent destination that Cade's just going to be able to recruit guys to come play for. It likely is going to be the other way around. People are probably going to try to get Cade out of Detroit and just recruit him somewhere else. And that's just the hard truth about it. That's probably just how it's going to go. So I don't know if the Pistons are going to be swinging and getting huge free agent signings to go their way all the time throughout this. And I just don't, if it does happen, we'll be happy. But I just don't know if that's something you can realistically assume. So I think the first big thing is individual player development. The team has to do a better job of developing their own guys. As bad as their drafting has been over the past, 12 years, 13 years, however long you want to go back, it's been really bad for a while now. However bad their drafting has been, their player development has been worse. You can go years and years back. Like some of these guys, you can say, maybe they just weren't that good. Okay. But a lot of times, guys who would just bust other places and guys who just wouldn't make it and pan out other places and become NBA players other places would have if they were drafted in a different situation. A big part, and you talk to any NBA player, you listen to any NBA player speak, and you talk to GM, scouts, etc., all these things. They say a big part of a player's career is about where they drafted and were they in the right situation and developed properly. Now, that's not to say if let's say Stanley Johnson ended up in, I don't know, like Toronto or San Antonio right off the bat, does he become the star now? That's not saying that, but is there a likelier chance that these guys that the Pistons have swung on and missed on, like Henry Ellison or Stanley Johnson possibly, or what are some of these other guys that the Pistons completely missed on? I'm missing a lot of these guys, but you guys know what I'm saying. If the development was better, Brandon Knight left the Pistons and was pretty damn good with Milwaukee before he was just destroyed by injuries. They gave up on Chris Middleton too early. They gave Spencer Dinwiddie wasn't properly developed here. Like, you can go on and on. The Pistons development team just hasn't been good for a decade now, a decade plus probably. So in order for them to get out of this, they have to get better at developing. They have to be able to develop their own talent, whether that's Killian Hayes reaching his ceiling, whether that's Isaiah Stewart developing some kind of jump shot offensive type of game inside, whether that's developing Marvin Bagley, who's not been part of the team, whether that's developing Hamidou Diallo. These players need to be developed, and that's going to be the number one way the Pistons get their way out of this. It's going to be developing their own talent, whether it's next year's first-round pick, whether it's next year's second-round pick, whether it's the year after that, a mid-round pick or a late pick, whenever it is. The Pistons will have to be able to develop and find pieces in the draft, kind of like the Spurs have done, find good pieces throughout the draft to keep themselves and develop these guys to keep themselves where they want to be. That will be the best way for the Pistons. That's the number one thing, player development and drafting, but more so player development. Second, trading. The Pistons are going to have to live and die by trades. That's how they're going to be able to get their guys, I feel like. Again, Keith, the historian of history of self, you guys hear me mention him a lot, Keith Black. He knows far more than I will, and maybe I'm misspeaking here. But the going to work team, a lot of it was put together by trades. Sign and trade, I believe, happened with Ben Wallace. A trade happened with Richard Hamilton. A low-key signing with Chauncey Billups happened, but then another trade happening with Rasheed Wallace. So the Pistons built that team a lot of, they had some low-key signs, but they had trades too. They made trades and accumulated the talent and kind of guys they wanted on the team through trades, because they weren't just going to get guys from free agent destinations. They're not going to get some guys that pick Detroit over LA or New York or something like that. That's not going to happen. But they made it through trades, and that's how the Pistons, I feel like, are going to have to do it here too. They're going to have to hit big on Jeremy Grant trades. They're going to have to hit big on when a guy wants out or a guy's available on the market, fetching up the things you need or accumulating that treasure chest of assets that we've talked about in the podcast a lot. Having a treasure chest of assets that you could then use to go get the guy you want that's available on the market or can take your team to the next spot. That's going to have to involve, and that goes back to some of my lone criticisms of Troy Weaver, is that I feel like he takes like these minor losses in some of these deals. And like I said, none of these trades or nothing that he has done thus far has really been a franchise-altering decision. So it doesn't really matter right now. However, that's what I'm going to be watching for moving forward. Like the Sadiq Bey trade. Did he get the guy he wanted? Yes. But I feel like you could still make the argument he took a minor loss, because 4 second-round picks is a lot of 4 second-round picks. And Luke Kennard, you could probably say that he didn't get equal value there. He probably paid up a little bit more than he had to get that 19th pick. At least I would probably make that argument. Now, I like Sadiq. He wanted to go get his guy. Fair enough. You had to go get your guy, and that's where he's going to make his money a lot. He's a draft guy. And if he continues to take minor losses on that, but hits on these guys every time in the draft, then we won't be having these discussions. But that's unlikely to happen every single time. So there's that trade. You have the trade where Bruce Brown was basically paid to get off the team, and now he's a fine role player elsewhere. So the Pistons, I don't know if you guys remember that, but the Pistons literally paid, I think it was $2.3 million in that trade with the Brooklyn Nets just to get Bruce off the team. You had, what was it? The Sekou trade got the Pistons second round picks back. So that was a fine trade. But that overall, my point is the Pistons are going to have to win these trades. The Pistons are going to have to win big on trades. They're going to have to get a treasure chest of assets, whether that's picks. Oh, and the other trade I was going to mention, I knew I was forgetting something. The Isaiah Stewart trade. He got the guy he wanted, but now the Pistons are incapable of trading a first round pick without doing a bunch of loops and hula hooping to trade one until that one conveys to the Houston Rockets now. So the Pistons, overall, my point is that trade is where they're going to make their biggest hit on this team, I feel like. Trades are going to be what makes the biggest dent on this team's future, and that's where I'm at right now. How they get out of it, they have to do a great job of player developing and drafting, obviously. They're going to have to hit on trades, and then when you get the money, make the right free agent signing. I doubt this team will ever be able to make the big free agent signing, but they have to make the right free agent signings along the edges. If you're able to pull a bigger one, so be it. That'll be absolutely great to see. But overall, they have to make the right ones along the edges at the right prices and not overpay for something that could end up hurting them in the long run, a la Josh Smith. So that's where we're at with the Pistons and the Tankers group. Do they deserve to be in there? Yes. Have they done a fine job so far to get out of it? You probably say yes, because they got lucky with Cade mostly. How do they get out of it? Can they get out of it? How far away are they? We answered all that today. Let me know what you guys think about this entire discussion. Do you think the Pistons are currently in the tankers group? If you guys don't, I think you guys might be on something special, some drugs out there. But how do you think they can get out of it? Do you think they've done a good job of it? Let me know what you guys think about everything we asked and we talked about on today's podcast in the comment section down below or on Twitter at KukaHill. I appreciate you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button. It's the best way to support the podcast. Make sure you make Locked On NBA your second listen of every day. Locked On experts covering the biggest stories around the NBA every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And the Pistons will be back in action tomorrow against I forget who they're going against, but they're back in action on Thursday. We'll have a podcast for you guys tomorrow morning. We're working right now to get one of the Locked On scouts on the podcast. We're going to talk to them about some prospects soon, hopefully this week, if not early next week. So stay tuned for that. But until the next podcast, I'll see you guys later. Peace out, everybody. Have a great day. Stay safe out there and go Pistons. I'll catch y'all later.